Did anyone tell you that you were tooting your own horn when you said something good that you'd done? I did this really good last week. Oh, you're tooting your own horn, right? You're too big for your britches. So, anybody here for the first time? A bunch. Hi, welcome. So I like to say, hi, Christine. I like to say, for those of you that are here for the first time, my deepest hope is that this morning is utterly life-transforming for you. And if not that, I hope that you discover that there's a path here that could be really useful. And if this isn't it, keep looking, because in Portland there are representatives of all the great traditions. And look for teachers who are really grounded 20, 30, 40 years. I think that's not always a guarantee, but it's a help. So these refuges, the refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, have you noticed that life's a bit unstable? Hawaii, goodness, you just never know. And life's unstable, so where should we take refuge? And since 2,600 years ago, people have been taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And the Buddha means not only the historical person, ordinary person who woke up, which is the foundation of our being here, but also that which is awake. There's something more than mysterious happening in this room, which is that we're conscious. How do you do that? I have no idea. Right? I do know that it's possible to be lost in thought and fantasy, and in fact in my own, I was driving over today meditating in the car, and I was watching how there'd be tremendous presence, just simple, just here, and the road is passing and there's no thoughts, and then gone for a while, and then whoop, and there's this kind of waxing and waning into being awake, and then being lost in the dream, and then being awake, and then being lost, and the robot drives well, which is good. It's really good, because otherwise there'd be no driving. The cars would be all over the place. So refuge in the Buddha is being awake in that, taking refuge in that aspect of presence. And then the Dharma, with that quality of presence, what do we find to be true? What's really real? And then we do it in community. And we need community because it's so hard to wake up. And when we're falling asleep, that's one of the really great things about Sunday morning, if you make a commitment to coming, and if you make a commitment to coming with a friend, particularly, because then you'll wake up on Sunday morning and say, oh man, I don't think I'm going to go. But your friend says, oh, what time are we leaving? In fact, twice over the years of my teaching retreats, people have banded together, a couple, not a couple, but people who knew each other, in one case over great distances, and they called each other each morning. One of them called the other each morning at the same time. Ready to sit? Yep. Put the phone down, sat. Okay, that's it, bye, after 15 minutes or something. Which, of course, didn't preclude going back to bed till the alarm, and then you can... Yeah, I had a great sit. But we have Sam with us this morning, Sam Forenchich, we've had a great time in the last few days, great for me anyway. We've been videotaping Mark and another person who wants to come to the center around the fundraising video that we're creating, which you will be seeing very soon. And we've had a very interesting time doing it. I've been learning a lot. So if you have any concern about being on this video, come and see me afterwards and we'll be sure you aren't. Huh? We are trying to raise $55,000 for the ramp and $76,000 for the whole project, which is tying the building to the foundation as well. And we're at 25 now with the early donations. Yeah, and we're planning, the rollout will be in about 3 weeks, we're thinking. It's going to be, CNN, NBC, Fox. We'll certainly get on Fox for that too. Come on, fingers. Warming up is really a real thing. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. Dharma. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. Sangha. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. Once more, I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. Nice. Hello to those of you that are joining us on the internet. To those of you joining on the internet who are there because you can't be here physically, stay tuned. We're in motion. So, what to do? Nothing. What if we were to just stop and do nothing? Perhaps to do this something of paying attention to the body. The slowest changing aspect of a human being is this material form. Thoughts change with the speed of thought. Emotions change fast. The body ages. Everything's in flux. One of the great discoveries of the Buddha was that this capacity of presence or awareness, what we're calling mindfulness or heart mindfulness, is trainable. So imagine that a week from now and a year from now and 10 years from now, this precious plant of awareness can be growing the whole time. And how do we do that? It's a very simple exercise. Bring awareness into the life of the body. Notice where your hands are and how they're alive. Notice the places where your body makes contact with the floor. Notice the life in your face. And talking about change, notice the fact that your body's breathing. Every single living cell in your body is dependent upon the gas transfer that happens in the lungs. So oxygen molecules that were released from our green brothers and sisters all over the planet are pulled into your lungs. They get in proximity, one cell thickness, with carbon dioxide, and they exchange each other for each other. Then we breathe them out. So paying attention to this breathing is paying attention to our absolute interbeing with life. It also provides a home base so that there's a certain tension that's created. The desire or plan or intention to be awake, to know what's happening. And each breath has a beginning. It doesn't exist, and then it does. Comes into being out of nowhere. There's a quality of fascination or being quietly surprised all the time that comes with living in the present moment. Because there's no predicting what the next moment will manifest. you'll notice that the mind wanders off. You fall into trance. Familiar trances of worry and planning and desire and disliking, restlessness. And then somehow awareness will spring into being. And then there's the freedom to come home to the breath. Just as an athlete does exercises to strengthen herself or himself for their sport, we do this exercise of mindfulness of breathing while sitting to strengthen us for our sport, which is living life fully. Several decades ago on a long retreat, couple of month retreat, I had a pretty major doubt attack. What am I doing here and does this work? And my teacher encouraged me, just start over. We're always starting over. You get lost and then you start over. And then he took me to a picture of one of the great masters in Thailand. And he said, the only difference between you and this great master is he started over 1,000,000 times or more than you. So when you discover the mind wandering, it's not a failure, it's just normal for the human mind. the waking up to it, and then knowing what to do is the path of freedom. And so every breath mysteriously starts. And then you can pay attention to the sensations in the body as it rises to fullness. And we notice not only the breath knows how and when to breathe, but it knows when breathing in stops, when enough is enough. And then it knows how breathing out happens. And then it ends. Awareness doesn't need to end with the breathing, however. It could shift to just being aware of the whole body or aware of the hands. And just as we use the wandering mind and the coming of the going of the breath and other body sensations for waking up, so too we can use anything that occurs to our sense doors. There's an interesting occasional sound happening. If we'd never heard it before, it would be very odd, we'd be very curious. But when it happens in this mind, it quickly becomes a chainsaw, a small chainsaw. Or so it seems. Could be wrong. It would be quite easy to become upset by it. It's supposed to be quiet. What's wrong with this place? And then there's a voice with emotion. That could provoke all kinds of things, depending upon our conditioning. It's a male voice. It could be scary. If it were that, then we'd notice, this is what scary feels, this is what frightened feels like. Oh, these are the associations that arise in this mind around that. This is how the body feels. And now this is quiet, except for this voice that keeps talking. Home to the breath. Home to the sitting body. We chanted at the beginning, refuge in the Dharma, in the way things are. One of the hypotheses to test is that there is nothing permanent. If we think about it for a moment, that our universe started billions of years ago with a great flash, and since then galaxies have been forming and colliding, and planets have been disappearing and forming, our presumption that something could persist is delusional. So as we observe the breath, and as we observe thoughts and sounds and emotions, we're also testing this hypothesis. Is this permanent? Is this me? Is this something I can hang my hat on? It's common to discover that one is somehow controlling the breath. In such an instance, we put aside the breath as our training object and take up hearing, for instance, or touching points, but hearing's interesting particularly. So we're no longer attending to the body or to breathing, we're just noticing the sounds that arise spontaneously out of nowhere. Most people, if in silence, experience a kind of high-pitched ringing in the ears. When it's strong, it's diagnosed as tinnitus or tinnitus sometimes. It's used as a training object by hundreds of thousands of people around the world. Sounds, inner and outer, arising and passing away. When we are attending to the breath, the sensations of breathing. Sometimes it's possible to expand the field of awareness to include the whole body. So we allow awareness to open in the feet and legs and pelvis and torso and shoulders and arms and hands and neck and face. In fact, the whole thing. And everywhere awareness awakens, what do you find? We don't find hands or feet, really. We find life. Life, tingling, vibrating, warm, cold, though no descriptor or adjective is accurate. The direct experience is always inexplicable, unnameable, really. In a few moments, this little while of sitting quietly together will come to an end. And I like to follow the ritual from my teacher, Ruth Denison, which is that there are 2 gongs at the end of each formal sitting time. The first isn't the end or the transition, it's a reminder to be awake. That there's a little more time of this shape, this form, this intention to practice with breathing and sitting and hearing. And then the second gong isn't the end of meditation, it signifies the transition to the next form. Because once we understand what meditation actually is, there is not a beginning or ending. It becomes what our life consists of. Did anybody experience irritation with the chainsaw? Raise your hand if you did. It's a legitimate response. It's okay. There were more than that. Come on now. Okay. Did anyone experience it as pleasant? Are you chainsaw people? No? I love it. I love my chainsaw. My daughter went to Pitzer College in anthropology, and she spent 6 months with the Makoshi tribe in far northeastern Brazil, right on the Venezuelan border, a little town. The nearest city was, well, you won't know it, I didn't know it. There's so many cities in the world. I flew into Manaus, which is right in the center of Brazil. It's a city of 2.5 million people. I'd never heard of it. But anyway, the story, she lived with this tribe for 6 months, and there were people who had been dislocated and they got their land back, and she was there doing interviews, helping them figure out who they were, really. And the head man of the tribe, who was the guy she stayed with, was invited to the UN to honor they're getting their land back. And there's a whole indigenous movement around the world. Indigenous people are banded together, and they're figuring out how to use the legal system to get their land back and get some rights and so on. Anyway, there was an environmental organization that was part of this whole thing, and they asked him what he would like, what gift he would like. You can see what's coming. And at this big presentation, he said, "Oh, what I'd really like is a chainsaw." And you think, if you live in the Amazon rainforest, what saves work the most? It's having one of those. So it was quite an incredible moment. Another chainsaw moment occurred at a retreat in Canada, at the Nelson retreat that I will invite you to in a couple of minutes. There we were in the Dharma Hall, and Richard was doing some significant chainsawing for a little while. And we had a very interesting meditation with it. It was fairly close. And he needed to do it, and I said, just do it. We'll deal with it. And it was so interesting because there were people who hated it, and it had all these associations of deforestation and bad. And those of us who've done a lot of work with chainsaws who rather, it's like, I love that. I've got a great chainsaw. And the work that it saves when you need it, when you're doing fire, when you're dependent on firewood for the winter, a chainsaw is really, it's essential. So we found it very interesting to illuminate how our human minds were conditioned. And we've had opportunities like that I've been teaching since 1979 in this is the 6th place that this has happened with me leading. And we were on the corner, we were right across from Powell's bookstore on that Flatiron building one Sunday morning, and the windows were all open, and there was suddenly this quick siren, freeze! And this whole police thing happened, and we just sat there through it. And that was interesting too. And afterwards we talked about the different reactions people had, because we have utterly different reactions to things. Quite remarkable. Who's feeling a little more or a lot more relaxed and calm saner than when you walked in? Look around for a moment. I like doing this because all we did was very little for 45 or 50 minutes. We just kind of sat around, we hung out. And we faced into what was happening. We paid attention to what was happening. Who had some unpleasant mental states? Who had some really pleasant ones? Who had some blissful, delightful ones? Right, they're all there. I think I'll do announcements now. Jim will not be with us today. So continuing on the Nelson, BC thing, July 8th through 20th, come and drop into silence for 12 days. And with myself and my colleague, Don McEachern, been doing this particular retreat for, 15 years or so. And it's really lovely. It's a beautiful place. We have our own cook. It's very contained. And it's long enough to go through the fatigue, to get rested, and then to have a week of really clear practice. You can actually come for the first week, but I recommend certainly do the whole thing if you can. If that's too much or too far, you could come to Brighton Bush in late July. I'm doing a 5-day retreat there. So, announcements. We have a listserv. You can sign up and at the back there, and you get information. There's sittings. There's so many. We're doing so many different sittings. Gary's on Tuesday nights. Christine does Sunday nights sometimes. Gary and Christine are two of our teachers. Wave to the folks at home. There you are. Avi is away right now. He's at the annual Inter-Sangha gathering. The Insight Meditation communities from around North America gather together. They're gathering at Gil Fronsdale's place in Santa Cruz. And he's learning a lot. He's going to come back with lots of good ideas. Donna. Thank you, Danny, for the prompt to I think we're not officially going yet, so we shouldn't mention it. But this is a brick and mortar place. It actually takes dollars to run it. And I've been listening again each year, the NPR, their pleading routine. I always listen. It's like, how do they do it? So today, no one's leaving until we raise, I don't know. What should we make our goal? 5,000? Lock the door. So we have to raise 5,000 before anyone leaves, and also we have to fill our volunteer roster. And we have food in the kitchen, so it's not going to be too bad. There's 4 bathrooms. But it is interesting to watch that, because they ask and they ask and they ask and they ask, and they finally reach their goal, and they do that remarkable programming that they do. And we don't ask a lot. We don't ask often. But we do need to ask, because we're very interesting. We have to be reminded. And one of the things that I want to thank you, Mark, and we also spoke with Jeannie Mooneyham, some of you know. I was so inspired by both of them. They're on camera, and they're talking about the importance of community. I feel a little teary. That there's something that happens when we gather together to practice. I think of the Jesus quote, whenever 2 or more are gathered in my name, there am I. There's something that happens when we gather together to practice. And then there's teachings, and then there's community, and then there's work projects. And we actually create a sense of belonging in which we can do the incredibly difficult work of waking up. And so that takes financial support. And last year we just barely broke even. We had $1,000 extra, which doesn't allow for many of the things that we need to do. There's many, like we don't have an electronic defibrillator for us old ones who might have a heart attack. And there's probably $20,000 or $30,000 of things we could do aside from the ramp, just in order to be a well-functioning community. And we'll be asking specifically for that. But today, I just want to invite you, if this place nourishes you, then nourish it. Go online and make a monthly contribution. There's our stewardship circle, or put some money in the Donna Bowl. We have a thing you can use your card. I'll put back there. Try to remember to put back there. But to think about that this place transforms lives. I'm in the optimal position for that, because I've had dozens, hundreds, maybe over the years, people come and say, last Sunday saved my life. I was suicidal, or I was just about to lose it and kick my kid out of the house, and I figured out how to have more patience, or my marriage was saved. I mean, people, to practice, particularly with any kind of regularity, changes consciousness. So this is an important place. And I invite you to reflect on how it's important to you and how it's changed you. I know it's, of course, utterly transformed me. The opportunity to play this role and to have the encounters with people, to have the loving, to have a context in which to have loving, safe encounters, and to talk about what's really important and what's really going on. So, and those of you out there on the net, you too can participate in supporting PMC. I think there's a little slide that comes on at the end that invites that. Yeah. Okay. I guess one more thought comes. It helps to have a conversation with someone who's been doing this for a while. If you look at robertbeatty.com, at the very early in my life, I thought I was going to be a mountaineering guide. That's what I thought I was going to do. And it turned out that I was a guide into the inner mountains rather than the outer mountains. But I used a metaphor in there about seeing me individually, which is that it's like if you come to a pass, a particular mountain pass, and you want to get from this village to that village on the other side there, then it's really smart to find someone who's been over that pass a few hundred times. Because they say, you're going to wear those shoes? You got to be kidding. Or, you can't carry that over this pass. That's impossible. And so it's the same with the Dharma, that we face this stretch. Maybe we've dug in a ways and we're discovering that there's a lot of fear or anger or jealousy or some life or sickness. And we then to consult with someone and be told, don't take that, try this. Mostly what happens in meditation interviews is, are you attached to are you identified with this particular thought you're having? Because we are. And that someone else reflecting on it sets us free, or helps set us free. So if you want to meet with one of our teachers, or with me, call Avi, he'll be back on Monday, I think, and make an appointment. There's no charge for it, it's an opportunity to, and if there's someone particular you want to see, say that. And if you just want to find someone to connect with, we have 5 or 6 active teachers, and Avi will connect with them and connect you up. So, and I won't go through all the nights and days you can practice there on the website, but there's a lot of different flavors too. Okay. There's an application of the practice that I just did, and I invite you to add to your repertoire. I think of it as plopping. When nothing's happening, when nothing's being said, or when you're sitting at a stoplight, or plop. You don't have to slump like that. You can actually, plopping is a consciousness move internally. So just to notice, oh, I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here. And to develop that as a reflex almost. There's a term called upaya, which is known as skillful means. And we develop skillful means, how can I practice in this instance? The skillful means that I was practicing this morning, I drive along Multnomah Boulevard coming from Beaverton. It's particularly clear there, it's a straight stretch. And so my hands are on the wheel. And I talked about this in depth a few weeks ago. My teacher in Burma taught it to me. And do this along with me. Be seeing. And then hearing. And then sitting. Posture. Touching. Touch. Seeing. Hearing. Sitting. Touching. Great way to drive. And particularly when it's so simple as a straightaway, to watch, to sit and see and watch what's happening, because this truth of impermanence, to watch how the world is coming toward you and then disappearing. Actually, try it with your hands. It's kind of fun. Put your hands out here and then bring them up and bring them past you and notice how they disappear. And then bring them back. And then, where do they go? Right, we know proprioceptively, or we think we know, but in terms of our direct visual experience, now, it sounds in a certain way silly, but to allow yourself to be just present and watching that, it's miraculous, actually. The world is appearing and disappearing. The same way as breaths are arising and falling. The same way as thoughts, blessedly. Blessedly, thoughts do the same thing. They come into being and then they disappear. No matter how crappy and nasty and unpleasant they are, if we don't glom onto them or resist them, they just arise and disappear, and we're free. And that's the refuge in the Buddha. That's that space in which everything's happening. And I overuse the word remarkably. It is remarkable to me, though. Being awake, inhabiting Buddha consciousness, is as close as this breath. Right? We don't have to go somewhere. People think, oh, I'm going to have to meditate or I'll never wake up in this lifetime. Or maybe it's impossible to be awake. It's here all the time. Though often we stay lost in our emotions and our fantasies and our fears and so on. But all it takes is a heartbeat to notice, oh, worried. And then we are not the worry anymore. There is worry, and it's happening in consciousness. So let's do a little movement together, starting right where we are. You say, let's meditate. I'm going to look like a meditator. I often say this in my introductory classes. We all sit cross-legged, right? This is the archetypal Buddha posture. There's another one over there with the earth-touching mudra. So there's 4 or 5. There's the lying down Buddha. There's one on top there. There's the standing Buddha. But this is the quintessential Buddha posture. Sitting cross-legged. The Buddha lived in a small city in North India where everyone sat cross-legged. They still do, though less and less, actually. But people in the villages all still sit cross-legged. So if you were going to meditate and you lived in North India, you'd sit cross-legged. I would. If you were from Bolivia, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Bali, you would squat, because they don't sit cross-legged that much, they squat. So imagine if the Buddha had been from El Salvador. We'd all be squatting. Right? Imagine this picture. Actually, he would have been turned away at the border if he'd come from El Salvador. That's another story. So, we're sitting. I invite you to take your non-dominant hand and notice how heavy it is. Feel its earth element. Feel its earthenness. And see if you can let go of it even more. Just let it be really heavy. And now, form the prompted because this voice is suggesting it, the prompted intention to let this hand rise up above your head, but don't do it fast. Do it really slowly. Notice how it happens. It's stuck there. And notice all the tension you have to do to get it till it begins to move. Notice any tremors that there are in the fingers. And let this non-dominant hand ever so slowly rise. Feel it. Feel its aliveness. Notice you can be aware of the rest of your body as well. You can notice the position of this hand vis-a-vis the other hand. The distance between them is growing. When the mind wanders, come back to this hand. And notice that there's absolutely no resistance from the space around the hand. There's just this cloud of sensations, which are your hand and arm rising. And I invoke my gratitude to Ruth Dennison, who created this kind of practice, actually, taught it for decades. And then when this hand gets up somewhere above your head, let it make a very slow, big circle. Notice how quickly fatigue comes in. It's heavy. See if you can leave your other arm and shoulder relaxed. See if you're breathing. Be here. I just noticed an impulse to hurry and get it over with. It's starting to hurt. Keep going. See how it is to finish the circle. And then let your hand open completely so your fingers extend completely and your thumb. Maybe stretch it that way a little bit, and then let them slowly come in, forming a fist. And then releasing that, and then slowly descending. Notice where the most intense fatigue builds up. And let it slowly find its way down until finally somewhere it finds somewhere to rest. And then notice how all the muscles can finally relinquish their tightness. And then there's a body sitting here. It's sitting. Skillful means, to what shall I attend? Oh, there's pressure in the buttocks. And how about that other arm? Let's let it do something very similar. Notice at first it's just weight. This is the weightiness of the corpse, right? It's the earth element. The body without consciousness isn't going to move. But in this case, there is life and consciousness. And now notice the intention, and then allow this hand to begin to do this journey. We make quite a fuss about telekinesis, moving matter at a distance, when we all do something equally remarkable, stunning. Just the mere thought of it, the mere intention, we move matter very precisely in the case of the arm and fingers and hands. And maybe as you let it rise, Let the hand turn as you would turn a doorknob. So we're using the flexibility of the wrist and the radius and the ulna, these two bones of the lower arm, forearm. So it's rising slowly, but also turning a knob to the left, or a dial, and then a knob to the right. Very totally present. Why not be totally present? And this time, let's let it go all the way up so that it's kind of pulling the body up on that side. Are you breathing? And notice the relationship of this hand that's up there, still turning its doorknob. Notice the relation of this hand to the other hand. Distance, proprioceptive awareness. And now letting this hand and arm make a big circle, either clockwise or counterclockwise. Maybe a little faster than the last time. I discover that this arm is much stronger than the other one. Hardly any fatigue at all. And now letting it go the other way. And notice how space receives it with no resistance. And let's let it stop up here. Become aware of the entire body, all the way from the feet to the legs to the pelvis and hips and chest and arm and hand and face and head. Awareness present in this arm. And now let's let the fingers and hand begin to shake a bit, kind of. And then let the forearm become involved, and the upper arm. And then let your whole arm sort of flap around a bit. Notice how every time it changes direction, you know what it's going to do. There's intention in every one of these. And then at some point, at the point of your choosing, just let it suddenly drop. The consciousness and brain research people have found out all kinds of really interesting things. The most interesting experiment that I heard so far is they have the experimental subject come in and they give them two buttons. A left-handed button and a right-handed button. And the instruction is, push either button you want as much as you want for half an hour. And however, as soon as you know which one you're going to push it as quickly as you can. So when I'm here and I say, I'm going to push the right one, I'm going to push the left one. I can't remember the number. Oh, and they had a fancy scan, brain scan. The researchers knew as much as a second ahead of the person which button they were going to push. Because the decision was made deeper in the brain than cognition, than consciousness, which has some very interesting ramifications about, I'm in charge of my life, I make all my choices freely. Might be just that they come to the surface and then, I'm going to do this. So let's stand, mindfully noticing though, don't just stand. Notice the intention, and then, how do I do it? Moving. And let's do this in honor of Ruth. I invite you to get your right hand shaking and your right arm and your right shoulder. And then let that stop. And then the left hand shaking, rattling, rolling. Let your shoulder be involved. And then let both arms be involved. And let them use the space around you without bonking anybody, up, above, below, beside. I guess just apologize nicely if you bonk somebody. What the heck? I didn't mean it. All right, and then let this stop. This is a very advanced form of meditation. Isn't that weird, right? To be present. How about balancing on one foot and then letting the other foot begin to move and then shake and let the whole leg shake? See if you can balance. Balance gets harder as I get older. And then the other one. And then you know it's coming, both legs at the same time. All right, so let the whole body just freak out. Let it. How would it like to move? How would it like to stretch? Lots of staccato movements be here in the body. And stop. I heard Ruth's voice just saying, stop! Stop! So, standing. Feel how alive and tingly that body is. Helps to let your eyes close, be in. And now let's let these bodies sway to the left and the right and the left and the right. And if you let them sway, you'll notice that at a certain point, the foot becomes light, becomes weightless, and it actually can leave the floor. Notice how present you can be in this body. Every time the foot touches the ground, present, present, present. Every time the head moves, every time there's twisting, every time a hand moves, present. And then let's let it be a little exaggerated, large movements to left and right. Let your arms be involved even. Please let us escape from the mistaken notion that meditation means sitting still. Let's end that one for the rest of our lives. And let there be grace and beauty if you feel like that. Lots of us have been told, oh, you can't move gracefully or you're poorly coordinated. Let it go. Just be beautiful. Just be alive and graceful. And now let's let our gracefulness become just swaying from one side to another, and let a little step happen, a forward step and another little forward step. And then let's step our way all around the room, walking. And we sometimes wonder, how can I take mindfulness into my daily life? Well, why not take it when you walk? You can walk among other people. No reason to be distracted from your own presence here in this stepping. Watch out for Gary. See, notice how you can really be, we talk about being grounded and having boundaries. You can walk through a crowd like this, very boundaried and grounded in your own body, your own moving. And then if you'd like, we can do a kind of a fun experiment. When you come towards someone, let the back of your hand touch the back of their hand. And notice the intention to reach out and then contact. You don't need to lose yourself. You're just in you. In you and in community walking. So we're not taking or giving anything, we're just life meeting other life, touching. And notice this touching has a beginning and ending the same way everything else does. And then if you'd like, we could become even more contactful and let your hands meet as if to shake hands and just connect for a moment and then let go. Again, not taking or giving anything, just contact. And then we could add a loving kindness practice, some wish. What would you wish for this person? Like maybe might you be happy or may you be healthy? So when someone gives you a little squeeze of the hand, you know they're wishing you well. And then another big step, if you want, you don't have to do this, of course, is when you greet, let your eyes meet for a moment. And you don't have to smile, you don't have to do something like that, just simply to meet and to know that the person who's greeting you is wishing you well. In fact, experiment with not smiling. It's kind of fun. It's like, it's against the social contract, though. You must smile, but don't smile. Just kind of grimace. It's like, I hope you're happy today. It's hard, isn't it? Don't smile. No smiling. Stop it. All right, and let's do one more fun thing, which is to stop the hand touching and walking mindfully, but with a little more speed. It's like no more hand touching. You're on your way somewhere. You're going to stay mindful, but you gotta kind of move it here. So stay in your mindfulness, walking. Notice how remarkable you are at avoiding collisions. And so you glance at your watch and you realize that you've got to get to the gate in about 4 minutes, and so you begin to go a little faster again, but you stay mindful. Every step, or just walk, step, 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 step. And then you hear that almost unintelligible voice that says, your name, your flight is leaving and you're going to lose your seat. So move. Now is the time to be mindfully nonviolent, but very intentionally, I am going to make that plane. And you're close to it's only 100 feet, so you really zip gonna get there, and you have your ticket and your passport ready, and phew, you made it. So you can slow down and start breathing. Mindfully walking. Upaya, skillful means how to turn every circumstance into Dharma practice. And let your body shake out, and how to be here with this step now. All right, let us find our way back to our sitting spots. Notice how it is to have a destination. And then take a minute or so to stretch, and then let's come to sitting. So I was sitting in an airport somewhere, coming back from a retreat on the East Coast, and I was well settled in, quite happy. My flight was going to go in 2 hours or something, 2.5 hours. And then I heard my name, that my flight was actually going very soon, but from about 6 gates away. I was at the wrong Portland flight. And so I quickly picked up my stuff, and I was going fast like this, but I've done this, 50 times on retreats. And I was laughing uproariously. I was like, well, here it is. How can I be mindful? It was the perfect opportunity to practice that. I felt like a bit like a madman, racing, racing and laughing. Why would that man be laughing so much, rushing for his plane? Upaya, skillful means, and developing the habit of dropping, of plopping into the present moment. I don't know why I remember this, but I do very clearly. It would be 35 years ago, anyway, at least. I was with a friend who was a colleague of mine. I was working with the Janus youth programs at the time. And he had to go to his apartment to pick something up, and it was in Northwest Portland. I remember the location perfectly. And he went in, and I sat in the sun. It was this beautiful summer or spring day. I sat in the sun, and I kept coming back to my breath. And there was, I don't know why would I remember that one particular time? But it was, this is the habit I'm developing. That when I can, I intend to be present. So I was very present, and that it was not a dramatic moment in any way. But all these years later, it's still very accessible to me because of how present I was. And it's that habit, that's the habit of freedom. Whether you're sitting in an airport or changing the baby's diaper, or I had about almost 2 hours alone with my grandson the other day. And we went for a walk, and he's 13 months, so stranger anxiety is big, but he doesn't really know who's pushing him. So we walked for an hour and a quarter, and then he was on the swing for half an hour, and then we had about a quarter hour walk back. But we had almost no interaction, because I didn't need him to do anything, and he was just there. We were both just there. And I got to do walking meditation and pushing meditation, and it was so nice because there was nothing to do except be. I had a similar opportunity a week or two earlier when Mom and Dad went out. I tried to give them a date night, and he didn't like being alone. He was standing at the bars to his cage. Let me out of here. And I'd try to hug him, and he'd push me away. You get away. So I just sat beside him and played my guitar and said, "Hi, Roland, I'm here." But it was a good meditation time for both of us. His on pissed off and hurt, and mine on being present and comforting, and it was a good time for both of us. Important. So this upaya, one kind of guideline with upaya is something physical. If you're chopping carrots or mowing the lawn or anything like that, you can return to. So those are very simple. But sometimes upaya means, let's say you're sad or lonely or angry or frustrated or anxious or despairing or blissed out or happy, to take that as your meditation object and realize this is what's predominant right now. Right? Or depressed. Or anxious. I think I mentioned anxious. I've been, an edge in my own practice lately has been, can I do that? Yeah. So the Four Noble Truths, there's suffering. Birth, sickness, old age, decay, death. Having experience I don't want to have, not having experiences I do want to have, being with people I don't want, or not being with people I do want, which is all day long, right? The wrong mood, the wrong this, the wrong that. So that's the first ennobling or noble truth. The second is what causes that suffering. And it comes from three, everything's counted in Buddhism, it comes from three huge forces in the mind. One is, I want more pleasure, I want less discomfort and pain, and I want to become something. This moment isn't enough. Somehow or another, I've got to become. And I've been studying, experiencing becoming. And it's so frequent. I'm hungry. I want to become a person who's eating impatience. Or I'm in a conversation with someone, and my intention is to be here, but I'm wanting to become somewhere else. So then my presence with the person is diminished by wanting to become that. It's very interesting how, and it means that this moment, or I'm sitting with my dog, right, patting the dog, but it isn't quite satisfying. So therefore, while I'm patting him and being present with him, I'm not quite, because, and I've been noticing how the to-do list is this, that the way the mind will present, I've got to do that today. I forgot to do this yesterday. I've got to do this. Oh, and then this one has a little anxiety with it. And so there's this object not fully engaged because I should be paying attention to that. Is this ringing true? That's one of the three causes of our suffering, this habit of the mind to be becoming. And the antidote is awareness. The primary antidote is, and then if let's say I'm speaking with someone, to realize if I'm noticing the becoming, I've got to do this later, then to notice that and then simply come back to the interaction, I'm here, and I'm seeing, and I'm hearing, I can be here. So we can practice constantly with this upaya, skillful means knowing what's causing us suffering. Making sense? So I want to ask you for any feedback or observations you made in any of our practices so far this morning. And also if you have any questions that I might reflect upon. In order to do that, I will invite you to use this sacred... This looks like a microphone with a little funny thing. This actually is a relic from the time of the Buddha. Because it said that whenever the Buddha spoke, people around him could understand, in a mythology, right? And they could also understand if they spoke different languages, they would understand. This doesn't translate, that's the Google version of this. But this actually, if you take it and it does something remarkable, if you do this... Don't mess with me. Is it going to do the little bat thing? Test one. There it is. I wish they had just a simple switch on this thing. It's such a pain. Anyway, if you speak in this side, it doesn't work well, but if you come up like this, it gets better and better and better. And then everyone in the room can hear you, including me and our friends on the internet. So, what would you like to know or share? How was that walking practice? What did you learn? Please say one's name one's own name, I guess.
I'm Tia. I have a friend who I recently discovered I laugh and giggle with a lot when I'm with her. And thinking about this, I realize that when I'm with her, I'm very playful. And in the practice we just did, we were not anywhere else. We were present and playful. And that responsiveness to the world around us and to the other people that we're with. Responsiveness rather than reactionary thoughts. For me, really helps me be playful, and then that brings joy to me. And I just wanted to share that. Come on. Don't leave me hanging up here.
Why don't you give a Dharma talk? Talk on, I don't know, impermanence or suffering or joy or bliss. How about bliss?
Bliss. Danny had a moment of bliss earlier. I remember.
Very blissful. I'm Danny. Hi. I just, when you were talking about Apaya and being in the moment and the whole chainsaw analogy and the chainsaw massacre and all that, it came to my mind that having worked with chainsaws before, you have to, when you're working with a dangerous tool, you have to be very mindful. You have to be totally tuned in and aware.
Yep.
Because there's also a circus analogy when you're walking a rope or anything like that. You are totally focused and in the moment. So a difficult tool like that makes you more focused and brings you into the moment. That's what I got.
Great. Over there. Danny, Wally.
Hi, I'm Wally, and I was thinking about the driving and how it is such a mindful activity, because as you're driving down Multnomah Boulevard at 40 miles an hour, somebody could pop out with a bicycle, and you need to be very mindful and aware and constantly alert, which is mindfulness, I think, unless you have something different to say about that. And I wanted to say that walking speedily through, as you were talking about the airport, brought me back to, I've got 20 minutes to catch the train back home, and I'm in Times Square. And I've got to get to Penn Station, which is a 20-minute walk away. Mm-hmm. And if I don't make it, then I got to sit around in Penn Station, sweaty and hot, for another 45 minutes till the next train. And so I'm walking through masses of people walking both directions. And walking in New York is an exercise in incredible mindfulness, especially if you're walking fast, which everyone else is doing on the sidewalk. I mean, and then you got to avoid the cars making right turns through the people. But I don't know, I would invite everyone to, if you ever get a chance to be in New York, try going fast from Times Square to Penn Station, which is a pretty good walk. I don't know if any of you have ever done that. So.
Mindfulness does have the special quality of knowing what's happening. One can be anxious and alert and just acting, but there's this knowing. Ajahn Chah spoke of it as the one who knows that which knows.
Hi, I'm Barney. I thought I'd try an experiment today and decided to go diagonally across traffic and see what it was like. And what I found is that if I let my mind intuitively feel the openings, it would navigate itself. And I found that to be much less effort than being caught up in a frenzy of seeing what is opening and what is closing. But I felt my mind almost like when your eyes are closed and when cars are passing by, you can sense the light through your eyelids. Mm. I felt in the same way intuitively. I could feel openings and closings, and it just navigated much easier from that point.
Barney, trust your feelings. Barney Skywalker. Barney Jedi. There it is.
Hi, I'm Allison. And I heard this morning something that was very profound to me, and that was when Robert was talking about the master teacher that said, start over. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I forgot about. I've been coming for quite a while, I think, and learning a lot, taking classes, and in the midst of a family war, much like the mafia, only it's not the mafia, but a lot of problems, and forgetting about mindfulness and about how to sit and be. So starting over and over, like the master teacher said many thousands of times, is something that is going to really live in me right now. And I'm so grateful for that, because there's nothing like the beginner's mind, too, for me, to remember that I'm not who I was yesterday, but I am who I am right now, in this moment, and that's what I want to practice. So thank you so much.
I want to jump in there for a second. Some years ago, I had a major falling on my face that happened, and public thing, and big deal. And Ruth Dennison, in her encouraging of me to pick myself up, she quoted to me from Goethe, and I can't do the German, but she did that first, and then she said, "There is no shame in falling down. There's only shame if you don't pick yourself up." And that's true. Every time the mind wanders, we're picking ourselves up and we're starting again. We're starting. And in that, we're shaping our destiny. Those mid-course corrections, those thousands and thousands of leaving aside an angry moment or a frustrated, leaving aside unwholesome mental states and cultivating a positive one. It has such an impact over time. Please.
My name's Dean, and it's my first time here. I was kind of hung up on whether or not it was a weed eater or a chainsaw for a while. Couldn't really tell.
That was my concern.
That was a concern
I had the same thing.
Yes, and I couldn't leave that place for a while. But
the really high pitch from the string wasn't there.
Well, it was the off and on. It was like the chainsaw. There's that gurgling noise,
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, I love my steel, by the way.
I was steel as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The best.
So much of what you've said today has resonated with me. I have a lot of pain and anxiety right now for lots of reasons. And so when we got up and did the moving meditation, it was a challenge for me at first. It felt awkward and like I was exposing myself, and it was, it was a little uncomfortable in the beginning. But as we went through it, I became more and more connected to, I was able to get outside myself and connect more to the room and the people in the room. And so there was a connection that sort of grew for me slowly, but it was pretty remarkable, and it was a very nice thing to do at this particular moment for me.
Great.
So I appreciated that, and I just wanted to say thanks.
All right. So if you want to talk, you should get that seat right there. And then I actually did have a question. I've been reading about mudita, sympathetic joy, and I like it. I've been trying to practice it, and it seems like sort of a corrective for competition, which can seem so pronounced in our society. And I was wondering if you have any practices that you try or you've ever instructed people on around applying that?
The 4 Brahma Viharas, the abode of the gods, the 4 wholesome emotions, which are our fundamental nature, which is an interesting idea, are love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha. So, one context to put this in love, there's room for everything. Right. The world is like this. This is how it is, and I am open to it. I am like this. I am open to it. That's the Catholic word for it is. I've lost it, but there's a similar word in Catholicism. Agape, yeah. Interesting, the word loving kindness came into the English language from the women translators of the Pali Canon in the 1890s who were so uncomfortable with the word love, they created the word loving kindness. So, when love encounters suffering, it converts to compassion. Oh, you're hurting? How can I help? When love encounters success and well-being, it converts to mudita, which is, I'm so delighted in your happiness. And I had a marvelous mudita practice recently. My wife Jennifer lived in New Orleans for quite some time, and she loves the jazz festival. She loves to dance, and so she went. And in the 2 or 3 days before, she was packing and getting ready, and I was having such a mudita experience. It's like, wow, I am so happy that you're going to get to go. There's more work for me taking care of the dogs and this and that and the other, but it's such a sense of, oh, you get to do this, and I am delighted. And so if you think about that, we all have that kind of experience in our lives, and so recognizing it and then supporting it. It's like skillful effort, the effort to recognize unwholesome states and then to restrain them. Similarly, to notice and to bring into being wholesome states and then to support them. So simply noticing it is the most powerful thing, and then you can do some thinking about it. Wow, I just had the opposite of jealousy. I just had, yes, you're succeeding. Wow, you got that great inheritance. Wow, that's great. I hope it really relieves that anxiety you've been having. And so it's a sense of delighting in. There's not so much that the news media bring us of that ilk, but it's out there, and sometimes they do, and we can take such delight in. I had a little bit of it, that fellow that interrupted the fellow with the gun. He hit him at the door, and then he started a GoFundMe page for the victims, and I had such delight for him and say, wow, in fact I have it now, I'm kind of goosebumpy. It's like, fantastic. That guy is just burgeoning right now, and so I get to burgeon with him if I reflect on it, and because this kind of reflection rests in the notion that we really are one. And I think we are. I'm pretty convinced there is one consciousness, and it peers out of all these eyes. And then we have our personalities and our conditioning and all that stuff that we have to deal with. So, is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Just look for opportunities.
question. My name is Christina. My question is about upaya.
Can you hold a little closer?
Yes, sorry. This is an uncomfortable moment for me. I had an interaction this week where I was not proud of how I acted. I kind of let my emotions get the best of me and was very angry about not being recognized. Mm-hmm. And just my question, I guess, is how to access that moment of resting and reflection when everything is kind of up on you. And also, like, the feeling about not acting the right way stayed with me for a couple days. So how to, I don't know, how to use that to help with that.
Have mercy on yourself. We do, my dad, who was a man of very few words, said one time, a very poignant moment, we do the best we are. And it really stuck. And in that instance where you didn't behave to the standard that you would like to behave, you did the best you could. And often we don't believe that. We think, well, I should have been. Well, the fact is that you weren't. And the fact is that we're all so vulnerable. And if the right fear button gets pushed, or the right, how many times have you not been seen and respected? The gender thing alone. To not have been, for your input or presence not to have been respected and valued, probably in your family of origin. And so that got poked, and some primitive part of you came out, and you didn't do your best. You didn't do your best. You didn't do it to the standard you'd like to. In the Buddhist psychology, there are two very helpful mental factors that are little talked about, actually. They're called hiri and ottappa. And one is moral shame, and it's not toxic shame like happens in families. It's that sense of, ooh, I did that and it hurt me or it hurt somebody else. That feels bad. Now, it's not guilt, and it's not I'm a worthless human being. It's, ooh. And that then is a motivator that the next time the opportunity arises to make the same error, ottappa comes up, which is called moral dread. And that quickly flashes in, I could do this, but whoa, I felt crappy after that. I think I'm going to restrain myself. So the sense of feeling bad for a day or two, my guess is it got tied up in shame, like toxic shame and identity-based shame, or maybe guilt. Though guilt is better, because guilt is I did something wrong, and shame is there's something wrong with me. So I would encourage you to really, the primary thing would be have mercy, that you're really just an ordinary human being doing the best you can, and it's really flawed at times. I mean, I still struggle with this, that this holding ourselves to perfection in interpersonal communication, or anything really, is such a curse. So is that addressing what you were asking?
Yes, thank you.
Be very merciful. But that whole thing I mentioned when I fell on my face so badly, we have to be merciful. We have to be. There's a big should, but let's try to be, and to try to be merciful with each other. That there's some really crazy, violent, awful stuff happening politically. And it behooves us to have mercy on the perpetrators of such violence. Mercy doesn't say we approve, but mercy says we realize, oh, this is a fragile human being acting in very bad ways. So we manage to hold people in our hearts while we then act as effectively as we can to stop what's happening or change what's happening. But there's a sense of inclusion in it, and to include oneself particularly. Tell me your name again.
Christina.
Christina, thank you. There was a hand back there, yes. And I think this may be the last person because I think the kids are in the chute.
My name's Karen, and I was just reflecting on one of the first things we did, which was talk about something kind that we had done this week, and I just realized how difficult that was for me, even though I consider myself a very kind and compassionate person. I had such a hard time pinpointing something I had done, and then I realized that I kind of had this impulse to invalidate the things that did come up, of like, oh, that doesn't count. Whether it was, oh, because I was at work, or, well, that's just what I should be doing. And just thinking about, I tend to be pretty aware of the conditioning that we all go through and trying to be, put myself outside of that and then realize how caught up in it we all get if there's no practice. And so I feel compelled to make it more of a practice to think about and reflect on those things and give myself credit or honor myself for the times that I am doing those things. So thanks for that.
May I suggest for all of you that if you haven't done this, get a nice little book. I like little books. Or you do it on your phone or however, and each day, at the end of the day, literally write down 5 kind or generous or good actions that you did today. And it can be, there's the one I would recommend, which is, I sat and meditated for a while today. That counts. I gave someone a parking spot. I helped someone. If you pay attention, we help each other so much. I mean, I've traveled so much, and I really, with 1 or 2 very rare exceptions, wherever I've been on the planet, people rush to help me. It's amazing. All you have to do is, we talk about New York or Paris being so cold. I look a little cold, I look a little lost. Someone stops and says, "Are you lost?" That's an act of kindness. When we, But to be articulate with it, because we are, if I were to ask, please make a list of 20 things about you that are really not that great, or things that you've done in the last week that you really shouldn't have, your obsessions and compulsions that you gave into and all that stuff. I bet we get a long list. Or list the 5 most bad things about you. Get a great list. But list 5 things about you that are really quite lovely and beautiful. And if we can't do that, it's just a matter of practice. But then there's that whole thing that I think of my dad always, don't toot your own horn, or you're taking up too much space, or whatever it is. But our practice will go more, it's more true to the Dharma to have a positive view of ourselves. It's more true to the Dharma, actually. Okay. Are there kids there? They're right there? I always have this image of the bull in the chute, right? So, thank you for being here. Thanks for participating. Do come and have a little snack. And yes, I'll be with you next Sunday. Next Sunday, I'm going to be in silence for several days at the beach. So be prepared for me when I get back. Thank you, those of you who joined us on the internet. Very appreciative. Hello, Nisi. No, we got new ones. We have 8, thanks to Avi, really, he put that together. We have 18 new super duper zafus. Those are zafus. That one's really, they're very thick. Well, may I hold your hand? Nice t-shirt. Girl power. Yes. Thank you, Eric. Do you guys have a good time today? Yeah, of course. Okay, being aware of this hand. Isn't it wonderful that we incarnated and have hands so we can hold them together? Give a squeeze to the hand on your right and wish this person well. And to the person on your left and wish this person well. And then we can imagine, or with our hearts send this energy around our circle, in one hand, out the other, hand to hand, heart to heart, and including in this circle all human beings. All of our brothers and sisters of the air, the earth, and the water. All of us who participate in this mysterious coming and going. So, we have the song. Test. You too? Are you two? Oh, those two. All right, here we go. Ha, ha, ha.
Okay. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you. Very nice. And so, we come to the end of our time together. We can carry out the great experiment before we blow out the candles. Is this circle permanent or impermanent? Can we let go? No. Let's see if we can let go. It's impermanent. And now, is this candle flame permanent or impermanent?
Permanent. I meant impermanent.
Impermanent. Should we test? Do you think it's do you think we can blow out that candle?
Yeah.
What if we can't?
Yeah.
You think we can?
Yeah.
You think it's...
If we can, then
Pour water on it. That's, all right, so are you ready? 1. Everyone in the room gets to take a deep breath. 1, 2, 3, blow. Yes! We did it! Yay! You were right! Yay! Give me 5. Yay! You were right. All right. Thank you, dear friends out on the internet. Very appreciative of you being here. Do come and have a cup of tea and schmooze and connect. All right.